My name is Jess and welcome to the Storyteller Fox. Come along and listen to read aloud books, be it for bedtime, story time, or simply to read along. St. George and the Dragon, retold by Louis Stowell, illustrated by John Joffen, read aloud by the Storyteller Fox. St. George and the Dragon. Chapter 1. The Deadly Dragon. A king was strolling on his battlements one day. As he admired his kingdom, he saw a dark shape in the distance. It came closer and closer and closer. It was a dragon. Its eyes flashed like fire as it flew. It let out a mighty roar, and jets of yellow flame shot from its mouth and nose. The king screamed, "Help! Guards! To the roof now!" The dragon soared in a loop around the castle. It roared again, and a river far below dried up with a sizzle. The king's guards rushed onto the roof to see what the king was shouting about. The dragon roared once more and set 5 fields on fire. The guards stared in horror. "Stop that dragon!" ordered the king. "It's going to burn us all in cinders!" His guards hastily fired their bows as the dragon swooped through the sky. Arrows flew through the air. Each arrow hit the dragon, but then the arrows all bounced off the dragon's tough scales. The dragon laughed. "You can't hurt me, but feed me once a day and I'll leave you alone." The king agreed. What else could he do? "Bring food to the cave by the lake," said the dragon, and with one last roar, it flew away. Chapter 2. Feeding the Beast. The next morning, the king's guards crept to the cave. They left 2 fat, juicy sheep for the dragon to eat. When they came back the next day, the sheep were gone. The dragon ate 2 sheep a day until there wasn't a sheep left in the kingdom. "We'll have to feed it cows instead," sighed the king. The next morning, guards brought the dragon 2 cows. As they were leaving, the dragon opened an eye and scowled. "Bring me something else to eat," it said, "or I'll burn your kingdom to the ground." So the guards ran to fetch some chickens nearby at a nearby farm. "How about these?" said the leader of the guards. "I hate chickens," snarled the dragon. "Bring me something else." The guards left again and came back with pigs and goats instead. Luckily, the dragon liked those. Unluckily, it swallowed them down in a few gulps. "I'm still hungry," it grumbled. "Bring me a princess," roared the dragon. "I want something sweet for a change. And don't pretend you don't have any princesses," it added, glowering at the guards. "I know the king has a daughter. I saw her as I flew off his castle." "Bring her to me tomorrow at sunrise," the dragon went on, "or I'll burn the kingdom to the ground." And it let out a burst of white-hot flame to show that it meant what it said. The guards rushed back to tell the king the terrible news. Chapter 3. Princess in Peril. When the king heard the dragon's threat, he went white. "I won't allow it," he declared. "Not my daughter." "But father, I have to go," said the princess, "or he'll burn us all." The king knew she was right. With a heart as heavy as lead, he ordered his grooms to get the princess' horse ready. Early the next morning, the princess rode to the dragon's cave. It was fast asleep. The princess saw its sharp, pointed teeth and shuddered with fear. As the sun rose pink over the hills, she heard the sound of hooves. Was it her father coming to say a last goodbye? But it wasn't the king. It was a handsome knight on a beautiful white horse. He carried a long lance in one hand. When he saw her, he gave a cheerful grin. "Hello, I'm George. I heard about the dragon," he said. "I'm here to help." The princess was overjoyed. "Don't be afraid, princess," George yelled. He swished his lance. "I'll save you." "Thank you, George," the princess whispered. "But please," she added, "could you be as quiet as possible as you ride closer, or you'll wake the..." Too late. The dragon reared up on its scaly legs. It was awake and ready for a fight. Chapter 4. George to the rescue. George whirled around to face the dragon. Flames shot out of its nose. They licked at George, but he didn't move away. Instead, he thrust his lance with a powerful blow. It should have skewered the dragon right through. But this dragon's skin was as hard as diamonds. George's lance bounced off the dragon's belly. Pushing George back, he fell from the horse to the ground with a clattering thump. The dragon roared and spat another fiery cloud at George. The princess looked on in terror. Was her rescuer going to need rescuing himself? George started to stagger to his feet. He reached for his lance, ready to charge again. It was no good. George's lance bounced off the dragon's scales and he fell to the ground once more. "George, look!" the princess cried all of a sudden. "There aren't any scales on its nose." George peered closer. Sure enough, the dragon's nose was soft. It didn't have any scales there at all. "Well spotted, princess," said George, but as he prepared to attack, the dragon began to lash its head from side to side. George looked around and had an idea. "Princess, pull off your belt, tie a loop at the end and pass it to me." The princess was puzzled, but she did as she was asked. "Thank you, princess," said George. He swung her belt around like a lasso and threw the loop over the dragon's head. Then he pulled it tight and threw the end to the princess. "Hold on!" ordered George, and leaped onto his horse. Before the dragon knew what was happening, George charged with his sharp lance. With the princess holding the dragon's head, George speared its soft nose. The dragon howled, and was well and truly caught. "Now, dragon," said George, "I'll let you go if you promise me you'll leave this kingdom and never, ever eat a human." The dragon nodded skullfully. "But if I hear that you're breaking your promise," said George, pointing at his lance. The dragon took at the hint and flew away as fast as its wings would carry it. Chapter 5. A Hero's Reward. George and the princess rode back to the castle and told the king the whole story. "You saved my darling daughter," cried the king. "How can I ever repay you?" He offered George a heap of shining golden coins. "You could buy your own castle." "No, thank you," said George, shaking his head. "Gold is too heavy to carry when I'm on an adventure." Said the king. And he offered George a pair of fine horses. Their bridles were studded with gems and their coats gleamed like moonlight. "Thank you, Shire George." "Thank you, Shire," George said, "but I have a horse." "How about half of my kingdom?" said the king, who was running out of ideas. "No, thank you," said George, politely. "All I really want is another adventure." And with that, George rode off into the distance, looking for more dragons to defeat. The end. Stories of George. The George in this story may have been a soldier born in Cappadocia, now in Turkey, in the 3rd century. Over the years, lots of different legends grew up about him. Many of these were about a fight with a dragon. In some, the dragon's breath was poisonous. In others, George slayed the dragon on the spot. The story was told aloud for many years before it was written down. It changed along the way, and it was told and retold. The end. And that's the end of our story time. For more bedtime stories, you can check on our YouTube playlist or listen to more storytime compilations at the Storyteller Fox. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.